Good morning, my dear student. I would like to teach you classification of haloalkanes and haloaryls on the basis of hybridization of carbon atom bearing halogen. As you are aware of the fact, in the case of hybridization, the two or more orbitals having nearly equal energy gets fused together to form new orbitals, and newly formed orbitals are known as hybridized orbitals, and the number of hybridized orbitals is equals to the number of orbitals taking part in the hybridization. On the basis of hybridization of the carbon atom that bears the halogen, this group is divided into two categories. In number one category, carbon atom bonded with the halogen is sp3 hybridized, and in the second one, the carbon bearing the halogen atom is sp2 hybridized. This number one is further divided into alkyl halides, allylic halides, and benzylic. Students often get confused with these words. I will try to remove your confusion. In all of these, alkyl, allylic, and benzylic, carbon bearing the halogen atom is sp3 hybridized. The number one, alkyl halide, these are known as primary, secondary, and tertiary. Alkyl halide, primary means carbon is bound with one another carbon. Secondary means the carbon under consideration is bound by two other carbon atoms, and tertiary, carbon is bounded by three carbons from three sides. These are called tertiary. Allylic halides, the carbon of carbon-carbon double bond bearing the halogen is known as allylic halide. For example, C double bond C, C double bond C, single bond C, then X. Here next to the double bond, this is the double bond carbon atom. Next to the double bond there is a carbon. This carbon is known as allylic carbon. This carbon next to the double bond is known as allylic carbon, and the halogen bound by this allylic carbon is known as allylic halides. Benzylic, phenyl benzene ring is bounded by CH2X. This is the benzylic. The other class includes the carbon having the double bond. Carbon is sp2 hybridized. In all these cases, carbon carrying the halogen was sp3 hybridized, and in this case, carbon carrying the halogen is sp2 hybridized. This includes two categories, vinylic and arylic. Each of the carbon atom where there is double bond in between them is known as vinylic carbon, and whosoever carbon bears the halide then forms the vinylic halides, and this is the aryl halides जहाँ sp2 hybridized. आइए हम आगे देखते हैं. Look into the structure carefully. Look into the structure. This benzene ring having the CH2, this entire will be known as benzyl. This first group, phenyl, each carbon of benzene ring is known as aryl carbon. Out of the 6 carbon, each carbon of the benzene ring is known as the aryl carbon, and the carbon attached to this benzene ring is known as benzyl carbon. Benzyl C6H5CH2, and if this ring is attached CH2 double bond CH, doubly bonded carbon are known as, this carbon is vinylic carbon, and CH2 double bond CH, again single bond CH3. This is the allylic carbon. So all 4 types of carbon have been mentioned in this figure. Let us summarize. Each carbon of the benzene ring is known as the aryl carbon, and carbon attached to this benzene ring is known as benzyl carbon, and this doubly bonded carbon, each of these carbon are known as vinylic carbon, and carbon next to the double bond, here is the double bond, next is this one is known as allylic carbon. Classification of halides. Alkyl halogen X is directly bonded to sp3, जैसे CH3 Cl, C2H5 Cl. These are the alkyl halides. Alkyl halides are also classified into 3 categories: primary alkyl halide, secondary carbon alkyl halide, and tertiary alkyl halide. As I have already told that primary, each carbon is attached by a single carbon on one side. In secondary, carbon is attached on either side by 2 other carbons, and in tertiary, carbon is attached by 3 carbons around. Vinyl X is bonded to sp2 carbon of alkene. Aryl X is bonded to sp2 carbon on the benzene ring. As you are seeing here, this is the ethyl bromide or alkyl halide common name. Each of the carbon is sp3 hybridized here. In this, each of the carbon are sp2 hybridized. Vinyl chloride and aryl halide. This is the aryl. Look into this carefully. Look, this is the all sorts of carbon have been known. Look into 1 degree. This is the primary carbon, because this carbon, kindly look to the cursor. This carbon is bonded by this carbon only. That's why this is known as primary carbon. This carbon is bonded by single carbon, this carbon. That's why this is known as primary carbon. This carbon is bonded by 2 carbon on 2 sides. First one this carbon and second one this carbon. So that's why this carbon will be termed as secondary carbon. In NEET examination and competition, these types of structure are often asked. They label 1, 2, 3, 4 and ask different type of question. If the carbon is bounded by only 1 carbon, then this is the primary. As you are looking into this carbon is bonded by this carbon only, and this particular carbon where my cursor is pointing, this carbon is bonded by 2 carbons, 1 carbon and the second carbon. It means this is the secondary. And look into this where my cursor is, this particular carbon is bonded by 3 carbons. This is the first one, this is the second one, this is the third one. That's why this is known as tertiary carbon. And look at this carbon. This carbon is bounded all around by 4 carbon. Here is the 1 carbon, here is the second carbon, here is the third carbon, here is the 4th carbon. That's why this carbon will be termed as quaternary carbon. And again this carbon is only divided by 1 carbon. This is the primary. This carbon is also primary. This carbon is also primary. So these are the alkyl carbon. This is the secondary alcohol. OH is an indication functional group. Alcohol are represented by functional group OH. This is the one side bonded by OH and other side by this carbon is bonded by 2 carbon. Here is the 1 carbon and here is the second carbon. That's why this is the secondary. Here look into this. This carbon is bonded by this carbon and this carbon. So total number of carbon atom around this particular carbon atom is 3. That's why this is known as tertiary alkyl halide. and this is the tertiary amine, because this nitrogen is bonded by 3 carbon on either side. This is the tertiary amine. For this structure, alkenyl chloride cannot use primary, secondary and tertiary. Alkyl each